Copyright, University of South Australia. This recording may contain third-party copyright material. Apart from any use permitted under the Copyright Act 1968, no part of this recording may be reproduced or rebroadcast by any means or process without the prior written permission of the University of South Australia and the copyright owners.
Welcome to a video on the muscles of the hand. So let's start by having a look at this left hand here from the palmar aspect and all the superficial structures that we can see which are around the wrist and the hand. So if we start down in the wrist a little bit here, we can see some arteries and some tendons, some nerves and some more arteries and nerves on this side. So if we have a think about the position of this hand, we've got the thumb, which we know is lateral, so we know that this is the radial side of the wrist, and then the pinky finger, which is medial, so we have the ulnar side of the wrist. So if we're expecting this to be an artery, we would expect it to be the radial artery. And then this tendon that is here is our flexor carpi radialis tendon. All right, so if you have a look on your wrist, as an example, if you flex the wrist, then you can see the tendons which pop up in the wrist, and if you feel just there, you should be able to feel that radial pulse. Lying in the center here of the wrist, right down its midline, is we have the palmaris longus tendon, which you can see then attaches into this broadened piece of tendon or fascia that's here, and that's called an aponeurosis, so the palmar aponeurosis or palmar fascia from there. Now this is a vestigial muscle, not all of us have it. So as an example, if I put my thumb and my middle finger together here, you can see that I don't have a tendon which pops up in the wrist there, in the skin. But if you do the same thing, you should find a really sharp tendon that pops up in there. If you don't, that's okay. Just like me, that's fairly normal, but some of us don't have it. Now on the medial side, we can see the ulnar artery and the ulnar nerve running together, okay, and these ones just lie just next to the flexor carpi ulnaris tendons in this case. So if we remove the palmar fascia or the palmar aponeurosis there, then we can see some of the deeper structures which are lying around the hand. So here what you can see is that the ulnar artery passes into the hand superficially, and then makes an arch shape here like this. So we can call this one the superficial palmar arch. Now how do we know that it's running into the hand superficially? Is that this structure here is called your flexor retinaculum. And that actually forms the roof or the ceiling to your carpal tunnel, where you've got the tendons of flexor digitorum passing in to the hand. They're passing deep to this band of retinaculum, so through an area called the carpal tunnel. Now that flexor retinaculum also gives origin to muscles of your thumb and muscles of your pinky finger. So if you have a look at your hand, right, and you squeeze your pinky finger and your thumb together, you've got this muscle on this side and these muscles on this side, and they're actually attaching to that flexor retinaculum, which you would find here in the midpoint of your palm or the heel of your hand. All right. So if that is the superficial palmar arch, then you can see that the radial artery is coming here, and it's actually heading towards the back of the hand. So it's passing through, and it's coming onto the posterior aspect before it goes in. And then if we remove that superficial layer of tendons and muscles, we can see that it comes in here from the posterior aspect and then forms what we call the deep palmar arch. So your superficial palmar arch is formed primarily by the ulnar artery, and the deep palmar arch primarily formed by the radial artery. Now if we have a look at some other structures that we can see here, if we talk about these thumb muscles, your thumb muscles and your pinky finger muscles, these are called your thenar muscles and your hypothenar muscles. So they have common actions, all right? So they will both abduct, like this, they will both oppose, like this, and flex, like this. So we can remember three letters, OAF, so you can remember the word oaf, which is oppose, abduct, and flex, all right? So here, as an example, this one on the most lateral side is the abductor. So you can imagine that because it's most to the outside, it's going to pull up like this. So imagine that you're going to go reaching for a bottle or something like that. Then here we have the two heads of flexor pollicis, and this one would be flexor pollicis brevis. And then here we have a muscle which is lying slightly deeper, which is opponens pollicis, and that's going to be pulling the thumb across. All right. Now on this side, it's not as easy to see, but we still have the same muscles. So lying most medially, all right, we would have abductor digiti minimi. Then you would have flexor digiti minimi and opponens digiti minimi. Now these muscles here are innervated by two nerves coming into the hand. So the median nerve comes in and innervates the thenar muscle group, abductor pollicis brevis, flexor pollicis brevis, and opponens pollicis, and the ulnar nerve coming into the hand on the ulnar side innervates your hypothenar muscle group. Now, some other intrinsic hand muscles that we have, some of them lie here between the long tendons of the flexor digitorum, all right, and we call these ones the lumbricals. Now, our lumbrical muscles create this action. So what they do is they create flexion around the metacarpophalangeal joints and extension around your interphalangeal joints, because what they do is they originate from the palmar aspect of the hand, and then they come and they attach and insert onto the extensor tendons here on the side of the fingers. So when they pull here, they flex that joint, and when they pull here, they extend this one. So they're your lumbricals. Now there's four of them. You've got the radial two and the ulnar two. So the ones on the lateral aspect, or the lateral side, or the radial two, these ones are innervated by your median nerve, and the ones on the medial side, or the ulnar two, these are innervated by your ulnar nerve. Now removing that, then we have a deeper set of muscles here in between the bones, and we call these ones the interossei. Now your interossei lying between the bone, inter being between, all right, and osseous being bone, these ones are responsible for abduction and adduction of your fingers. So if we're going to draw some of these muscles in so that we get a better understanding of how they work, we use a template again. All right, so let's put some of these muscles in. Now a dorsal interosseous has two parts to its muscle. So the interossei in general, all right, we have a palmar set and we have a dorsal set. Now your palmar ones, they do adduction of your fingers, and your dorsal ones do abduction of your fingers. So if you can remember, or you like to remember, PAD and DAB, so pad and dab will help you remember these actions that your palmar ones or your dorsal ones do. Now these are all innervated by your ulnar nerve, all seven of them. So the four dorsal ones and three palmar ones are all innervated by the ulnar nerve. So if we draw those in, let's draw a dorsal one to begin with. So the dorsal ones, they have two muscle bellies. So they actually attach like this, whereby they originate from the sides of the metacarpal shaft, and they have this feathered appearance. So when you have a feathered appearance to the muscle, it's described as having pennation. So P-E-N-N-A-T-I-O-N, pennation. Right? So this one would be a bipennate type muscle. Right? So if you think of it like the tail feather on a bird. Now, if you want to have a look at this, here is representative of this space, that first intermetacarpal space. Now, if I abduct my index finger, you can actually see the muscle there pulling. All right. Now this one's the largest, the first dorsal interosseous, and that's there so it can oppose the strength of the thumb. So if you put your finger just here and then you pinch, you can feel that this muscle's contracting quite strongly so that it doesn't push the index finger into adduction. All right. Whereas a palmar interossei, they're going to create adduction. So we've talked about the midline of the hand in the previous video, and we said that it was the middle finger. Right, so you can see that this muscle is going to pull the finger in this direction, so therefore abducting it. But if we had a palmar interossei, it needs to adduct the finger. So let's do it on the ring finger here so that we get a good idea of it. So there's only one part to this muscle, so we describe it as a unipennate type muscle. So the muscle comes like this. So it originates from that radial side of the shaft of the metacarpal and attaches up to the base of the proximal phalange, as well as attaching into some extensor tendons on the dorsal aspect of the hand. So you can see here then that when this muscle, it's going to pull in this direction, right, therefore creating adduction. So if we put another palmar interossei in, all right, but on this side now instead, you need to imagine that it's going to be on this side of the hand, all right, because now that we've changed from one side of the midline to the other, you then need to have the muscle pulling in this direction. So how do we know whether it's going to be a palmar interossei or a dorsal interossei just like from the picture? Have a look. Do they have this unipennate shape or do they have this bipennate shape? So if you were going to imagine, like let's take a cut through the hand like this, all right? So then these circles here, they're representing the metacarpals, but cut in cross section. All right, let's imagine this is the middle finger, and this is the index finger, and this is the ring finger. Your dorsal interossei will lie above, like this, to the dorsum of the hand. All right, so more to the posterior aspect. Whereas your palmar interossei, let's do them in blue, just so it keeps it straightforward. You can see that they're more to the sides of the metacarpal, so they're just going to live here instead. All right, so you can see that these ones are more dorsal and these ones are more palmar, but they're very close together. All right, now if you're going to look in a picture once again on Google or something like that, just have a look and see if you can recognize the shapes of the muscles like this. All right, so just a quick overview of all of that. If we have a talk about the groups of muscles that we had inside the hand, all right, we then had the 4 intrinsic muscle groups. All right, so intrinsic meaning inside, and they're going to be acting on your fingers. All right, so we had thenar group, we had hypothenar group, we had the lumbricals, and the interossei. All right, so if we talk about these in a bit more detail, if we name them, we had abductor pollicis brevis. Then we had flexor pollicis brevis and opponens pollicis. Now this one therefore creates abduction at the metacarpophalangeal joint, flexion at the metacarpophalangeal joint, and opposition at the metacarpophalangeal joint of the thumb. Remember, that was a saddle type joint from the previous video. And then a nerve which was responsible for these ones was the median nerve. Hypothenar, so based on these here, we're going to have the same beginning names, but they're going to be for the pinky finger. So we have abductor, digiti minimi. Then we're going to have flexor, digiti minimi, and opponens, digiti minimi. And because they're on the medial side of the hand, the nerve that's for this one is the ulnar nerve. Now the lumbricals, if you remember, we had 4 lumbricals, all right, but then we had the lateral 2 and the medial 2. They all have the same action, if you remember, was flexion of the metacarpophalangeal joint and extension of the interphalangeal joint, so they help you hold a sandwich effectively like this. All right, but our lateral 2, they were innervated by the median nerve, and the medial 2 were innervated by the ulnar nerve. So remember that median just means center, so it's central coming through into the hand. On the medial side of the hand, it's the ulnar nerve which gives innervation to this region, and the lateral side of the hand, it's the median nerve which gives innervation to this side. So the muscles that are in that region follow the same patterning. Now the interossei, if you remember, we had palmar and dorsal, where there were 3 palmar ones and 4 dorsal ones. The palmar ones, they did adduction of your fingers, so remember pad. The dorsal ones did abduction of your fingers, so you're remembering dab. And then all of these run by the ulnar nerve. So what you can actually see here is that the ulnar nerve is responsible for innervating more of the intrinsic hand muscles, whereas when we talked about the forearm, we said that more of the muscles in the forearm were innervated by the median nerve. Right, so the flexors of the forearm were by the median nerve, and the extensors of the forearm were innervated by the radial, if you remember. All right, thanks very much. Looking forward to the next video.